Hello, everyone, and welcome into the last post-game show of the 2025 NFL season here on the X's and Dogs podcast. Today, the Browns wrapped up their season on a positive note, which I didn't expect them to do, and I think this 20-18 victory in Cincinnati over the Bengals was a very good reflection of the season as a whole. You know, the Browns offense did very little in this game. The defense scored 14 points, kept the Bengals at ease for the majority of the game, only allowed 18 points in this one, and ultimately gave the Browns the chance to win the game, you know, that did require a game-winning drive. Andre Schmidt was fantastic again. And Myles Garrett broke the sack record. I think this really was the perfect game, you know, overall to end the season for the Browns. Everything that we've seen so far this year showed up today, and the Browns were able to do what they weren't able to do in week one of the season, which is beat the Bengals and make all the kicks they needed to make. Now, the first thing we have to talk about is simply Myles Garrett and the dominance he was able to put out there this season, and capping it off with that sack today against Joe Burrow, breaking the sack record, getting his 23rd sack on the year. Who knows how long that sack record will last? Who knows if Myles Garrett will break it next year or the year after that or the year after that? But all we know for now is Myles Garrett showed us one of, if not the best pass rushing seasons by any player in NFL history this season. He broke the record on significantly less passing snaps than any player he was competing with. And he did it on a terrible football team that was getting blown out in so many games this season. And it really is just so impressive. And I think as Browns fans, we take this guy for granted a little bit. But it's a pleasure as a Browns fan to be able to turn on the games every Sunday and have a guy who can single-handedly keep you in football games, can single-handedly set the bar at a certain level defensively, you know. And I think all Browns fans should be thankful that we get to watch this fantastic football player week in and week out on our favorite team. And you know, it really was a great moment today watching Myles Garrett break the record. I thought it was fun all game. You know, he was chasing it. I think the broadcast team did a pretty good job highlighting and kind of making the game about Myles Garrett, because neither of these teams are playing for anything truly. But both teams were definitely trying to win the game. You know, the most important thing to come out of this game was going to be if Myles Garrett was able to break the sack record. And I was glad that the broadcast team, you know, really put a highlight on that situation in this game. And eventually Myles Garrett did get his hands on Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow did kind of drop for him. I think he knew Myles Garrett was going to get him. I think Joe Burrow had no interest in taking a hit from Myles Garrett in a Week 18 game where the Bengals aren't going to the playoffs and aren't really playing for anything. So, you know, just congratulations to Myles Garrett. I can't wait to continue to watch him on this football team. You know, in the offseason, I was someone who was almost on board with trading Myles Garrett to recoup all the first round picks for him. And after this season and the way Myles Garrett played for us in 2025, I think he really shut up all the people that had those takes that this team could be better off somehow without him, because he is the best defensive player in football. He might be the best player in football, period. The most dominant player in football, period. And like I've said many times already in this podcast, I'm just thankful to be able to watch him play for my favorite team every week. So That was the most important thing in this game, and we all got to witness history today. But I want to allude to the Browns team as a whole next in this podcast and talk about the way this team was able to end the season, because I think, especially here on the X's and Dogs podcast, I've really shined the spotlight on the quarterback position and really focused on the quarterback position because I'm someone who believes that the quarterback position is truly the most important aspect in all of pro sports. I don't believe a team without a true franchise quarterback can really compete for a Super Bowl. Now, who knows what will happen this year? I think if there's ever a year where a team can win a Super Bowl without one of the best quarterbacks in the league, it will be this year. But for a show here that has focused so much on quarterbacks, I want to just take a moment to zoom out and talk about the Browns and the way we've been able to finish this season. You know, we went into the Bears game a few weeks ago with the idea that we have a barometer for where this football team stands to end the season, and we had the rare opportunity to play against four playoff teams. Now, I know that the Bengals probably or definitely aren't going to go to the playoffs, but if Joe Burrow played all year, I think he was 5-3 as a starter this year, if I'm not wrong. I would have been shocked if Joe Burrow played all year and didn't, at least have I think the Bengals probably win the division if Joe Burrow plays all year. But at least, be a wild card team at the very minimum. It's a completely different football team there in Cincinnati with Joe playing. So, you end the season with the Bears, who are going to the playoffs and winning their division. The Bills, who were competing for their division all year, going to the playoffs as a wild card team. The Steelers, who are playing for the AFC North tonight against Baltimore in a huge game that we will all have our eyes on, I'm sure. And then lastly, the Cincinnati Bengals, who I just said, led by one of the best quarterbacks in the league, are truly a different football team than whenever he's not there. And it was a good barometer for this Browns team. And if you go back and look at that 4-game stretch, no, the Browns weren't competitive against the Bears. But apart from that game, you really can hang your hat on the way this team ended the season and competed with these really good football teams. They took the Bills to the wire, had a couple opportunities to win that game in the fourth quarter, weren't able to do so, but were super competitive. Then they go and beat the Pittsburgh Steelers in a game that the Steelers needed to win the division. Then they finished the season off against a Bengals team and beat them, who are, very much trying to win this game. All of their starters were in there. Joe Burrow wanted to continue to build on the successful past few weeks that he's had since coming back from injury, and he was able to do that with 236 yards, 3 touchdowns, and probably win the game if they're able to make their extra points. But the Browns end up going 2-2 in that stretch. And you can even take it back even further than that, where they beat the Raiders. They do lose to the 49ers, but I think in the last 7 games since Shedeur became the starter, this team is 3-4. And I'm not going to say that it's a direct correlation to Shedeur being the starting quarterback, because the team, the offense hasn't gotten significantly better since Shedeur's been in there. Today, they only scored 6 points. But I think it alludes to the fact that this Browns team is not as far away as a lot of people will tell you from being a competitive football team. And, we all have our eye on the news and on Twitter, on Bleacher Report, whatever sports news system you use to see if Kevin Stefanski gets fired later on this evening or tonight or even in tomorrow morning, tomorrow afternoon, Tuesday, who knows? We're all kind of waiting to see what happens with Kevin Stefanski. And I'm not someone who really believes that momentum carries from the last 4 games of the season into the next year. But I think for a team that has all these rookie players and has a whole bunch of young players in general, has all of these rookies contributing, it really is important for them to have a stretch of 7 games to end the year where they're playing about 500 football and keeping up with some of the best teams in the league. I think that really is a positive sign for the Browns organization. And if you want to take a silver lining out of a very negative season where it was super frustrating to watch this team all year, I think that can be a silver lining. I think Shedeur Sanders could be a silver lining. And we'll get into Shedeur's performance today later on. But I just want to give this team credit for fighting till the very end. As just a stubborn Browns fan who also talks about the team a little bit with you guys, I was someone who didn't want this team to win these last 2 games. Going into the Steelers game, I pretty much wrote them off in both of these games, giving them no chance to win, because I just figured both the Steelers and the Bengals were the better football teams. The Browns, of course, would have benefited from losing those games and probably secured the second overall pick if they did lose. Now, the players don't care about that, and I understand that, but you have to give this team props for going out there and winning and competing until the very end of the season here. And regardless of if Kevin Stefanski will be the coach next year, you have to give him credit for keeping these guys on board, motivated, fighting till the very end. And, to me, there is no lost respect with Kevin Stefanski based on the fact that he was able to keep this team performing to a standard up until, the very last whistle. So I think I just wanted to add that positive note today because it was a win to end the season, but I think it's a little bit more than that whenever you zoom out and look at kind of the last few weeks here. The next thing I want to talk about is Andre Schmidt, who, it really is ironic because we look at the first week of the season and I think we bring in this kicker who has never kicked, who had never kicked before in the NFL, and he goes out there and it's hard to blame a game on one player, but he was a very significant reason that we lost week 1 against the Bengals back in Cleveland when we had Joe Flacco starting at quarterback. I think Andre Schmidt missed a couple field goals in that game, a couple really crucial misses, and the Browns lost by 2 points, if I'm not mistaken, in that one. So, if you make one of those kicks, you end up winning that game more than likely. And then we kind of get the full circle moment where week 18, we play the Bengals again in Cincinnati. Joe Burrow's playing again in a season where he missed the vast majority of the year. Of course, the Browns faced Joe Burrow somehow twice this season. Of course, being the only team that had done that, I believe, unless the Ravens also did it. I'm not sure. I don't believe they did. But coming full circle, Andre Schmidt comes out here, hits 2 very long PAT attempts today, where, of course, we had the celebration penalties. The same touchdown celebration happened 2 times. And Andre Schmidt goes out, hits 2 50-yard PATs, then hits the 50-yard game winner, as well as, the shorter kick there in the third quarter as well for an additional field goal. And Andre Schmidt was our best offensive player today, in my opinion. I think that's a really cool way to kind of tie out the year where you have this rookie kicker who's never kicked in the NFL. We rely on him in week 1. He lets everybody down, but bounces back tremendously throughout the year. Had a really good year. Then gets the game-winning kick in week 18, which will be a great experience for him, and something that he can learn from going into next year where hopefully we're in more meaningful games. where now he has the experience of making a game-winning kick. So that's just, I think, a fun and another silver lining, because we can all just take a deep breath with the kicker position now and move on into next season, knowing that we have a guy who was able to have a really good season and now only has the track record of being a good kicker. Dustin Hopkins was a kicker who came in here and had a fantastic season in 23, but really before 23 was not a great NFL kicker. So if you know anything about the kicking position, there was always the possibility that he was going to return to the mean there. But the difference with Andre Schmidt is he's only been good so far. And that really is relieving for a team who hasn't been able to find a kicker with any sort of sustained success. And I'm not going to sit here and say that there's no chance Andre Schmidt will go out there and be bad next year. Could certainly happen, but I'm going to feel comfortable with him out there next season from day one. And that is a fantastic thing for this team going forward, because we all know how important the kicker can be and how detrimental it can be if you have a kicker who's not competent. Now I want to wrap up today's podcast talking about Shedeur Sanders. I purposely left Shedeur's performance, the discussion of Shedeur's performance, till the end, because I don't think this game was about Shedeur Sanders. I don't think Shedeur Sanders was even in the top 5 reasons that we won this game. Shedeur went 11 of 22, so 50% completion, 111 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. I made a tweet during the game today that everyone complaining and clamoring about all the batted ball interceptions, all the dropped, tipped interceptions that Shedeur has gotten so far this year. Those people should probably stop making those statements, because in this game alone, Shedeur Sanders could have had 4 interceptions, in my opinion. He ends the day with 0. Now, the turnover-worthy play percentage is still probably going to go up, because of 22 attempts, I think he had 4 or 5. I mean, I haven't gotten a chance to look at the actual grades yet, but I would say 3 or 4 turnover-worthy play throws. We'll see what the actual numbers say, but without going back and watching the game over, that's just on the top of my mind. I can think of at least 3 plays where Shedeur was very lucky to not have an interception. And I was ready to come on today's show before the last drive and bash Shedeur for what truly was a horrendous game. Even if you're a very strong Shedeur supporter, a Shedeur fan, you have to admit that today Shedeur Sanders played a bad football game up until the last drive. He was struggling with getting rid of the ball quickly, which was something that he had been able to do pretty effectively the previous 2 weeks. He kind of went back to that struggle this week. And the play I want to point out, which a lot of people are going to sit here and tell me is just a blunder on the offensive line, which is a very common thing to say whenever you're talking about Shedeur Sanders. But I think it was like 2nd and 17. It was in the second quarter. The Browns were, near their own goal line or on their own side of the field for sure. Shedeur Sanders dropped back. It was a simple mesh concept. I think Kevin Stefanski or Tommy Rees just came up with this play to hopefully get 5, 6, or 7, maybe 8 yards back, make it a third and manageable, or at least have an opportunity to pick up the third down. Shedeur Sanders proceeded on this, what I believe should probably be a 3-step drop, because most mesh concepts, you're just trying to get the ball out quick. He dropped back. He had the happy feet where he drops back 10 yards and ends up taking a 10-yard sack on a mesh concept where it was truly open. I don't remember the receiver that was running or the receivers that were running the mesh, but it was open. He could have thrown it for sure. We'll see it on the all 22, but you can't take sacks on plays like that. And yes, there was a free runner to Shedeur Sanders. Eventually the line did allow pressure in that play, but the play is designed to get rid of the ball quickly. And if you don't do that, you're going to take a pretty gnarly sack there, and it's going to look pretty bad. And you can't afford it. So that's just one of the plays I wanted to point out. There was a numerous occasion of times where I thought the line was protecting decently well for Shedeur, but he just wasn't able to get the ball out of his hands today. He ended the day with 6 sacks. So obviously, a game where he's taken too many sacks. He was kind of able to avoid a game like this up until this point, but I think today was probably his worst performance on the year overall. And yes, the final drive where he's able to get the team in field goal range was, I give him so much credit for that, because it's the last game of the season. You have this last drive where you're 4-12, you're not really playing for anything. The team you're playing is not really playing for anything. You don't have any offensive weapons, to be fair. Harold Fannon's not playing. Jerry Jeudy really wasn't having a good game up to this point. The offensive line, now down Luke Whippler as well, is just, I thought actually was pretty good pass protection wise, but obviously not a great offensive line. It'd be easy for Shedeur to just pack it in, especially after he took that sack and it was the 3rd and 10 pretty much right away. But the guy did go out there and fight. Made a couple really nice throws, a couple really nice reads. I thought on that 3rd and 10 throw, I can't remember the receiver for sure. It might have been Larvidan, but I might be wrong on that. It was the 3rd and 10 where Shedeur stepped up really nicely, kind of evaded some pressure, hit a guy on a comeback route on the outside for like 12 or 13 yards, picked up the first down. Then again, hit Jerry Jeudy on a really nice route to the middle of the field. A nice throw. There was one of the Bengals defensive line men had their arms up in the air. Shedeur was able to get the ball around him. A great throw in a very, clutch spot. And he was able to bring the team down the field and have a very manageable field goal that the kicker should make, and he did make it, and we won the game. So, I have to give Shedeur his credit for that. That was a ballsy performance there on the last drive. But up until that drive, I thought Shedeur had chance, not necessarily chance after chance, but a multitude of opportunities to put this game to bed, and wasn't able to do so either because he took a sack or because he was just throwing the ball inaccurately. I thought particularly today, Shedeur Sanders was inaccurate. There was a number of throws that, like, for example, that Jerry Jeudy had that crossing route, which was open. I thought it was the right decision to throw the ball. It was almost an interception. It was that play that Shedeur threw it high and behind Jerry Jeudy. A lot of people kind of said Jerry Jeudy didn't give maximum effort, which, yeah, like, I agree with you on that. You're never going to catch me on this show saying that Jerry Jeudy is a fantastic player to have on this football team, because the guy makes a lot of losing plays and his attitude just seems to be really bad, and he does not give it all his effort most of the time. But the thing is the throw was just inaccurate, and it should have been intercepted. And I thought there was a number of throws like that today, that was something that Shedeur Sanders hadn't done up to this point in the season. I thought while having other issues, the one thing he was able to keep consistent was that he has been really accurate with the football. That translated from college football to the NFL. And it's okay. It's one inaccurate game. I'm not going to say that the guy's an inaccurate thrower of the football just because he had one game like that. But, I thought the inaccuracy on top of kind of what appeared to me be some pretty bad footwork in the pocket, not really seeing things as quickly as he needs to. And what should have been a multi-interception game, in my opinion, if not for some turnover luck in favor of Shedeur Sanders. I just thought it was Shedeur's worst performance of the year in this one. And, he ends the game with a 64.8 rating and only 111 yards, 50% completion. I highly doubt Shedeur Sanders would tell you that he was content with his performance today. But the team did get the win. Offense only scored 6 points. The defense carried them there. Carried them to 20 points total on the day. And you have to give Shedeur the tip of the cap for his first career game-winning drive. And, I've thought, apart from the Bills game, he was unable to lead a game-winning drive. But in the first game he played of the season against the Ravens, he had an opportunity to drive the team down the field and potentially score the touchdown. I thought he made good throws in that drive, and I felt the team had a chance to score a touchdown. I honestly didn't feel like the team had a chance to go and kick the game-winning field goal today, but Shedeur Sanders, to his credit, was able to do so. So I think, there is a true importance to being able to drive a team down the field and throw the ball whenever everyone in the stadium knows that you have to throw the damn ball to go down there and win the football game. The best of the best do that consistently. Joe Burrow did it the drive before. He did it, if anything, too quickly and scored a touchdown today. Gave Shedeur too much time on the clock. How many times have we seen Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen or Aaron Rodgers or Ben Roethlisberger whenever, he was playing, or you name the great quarterback? How many times have we seen them do stuff like that? That is a feature in the game of these franchise quarterbacks. I think it's one of the keys to becoming a franchise quarterback. And I'm not saying Shedeur Sanders is anywhere near a franchise quarterback, but I'm saying that is a step in the right direction, being able to pull something like that off, beat a division rival on the road. It's impressive, and I got to give him a tip of the cap. Overall, I would still, I can't really give him much more than a D+ in this game, because I did think he was pretty much terrible outside of that last drive, which quarterbacks do have games like that. All the best quarterbacks in the leagues have these games where they play bad, but they're able to get the job done when their team needs them the most. Shedeur kind of had one of those games today. So yeah, D+ performance. Here's kind of the long-term idea with Shedeur Sanders, and I'm pretty comfortable with saying this at this point. We're not going to see Shedeur Sanders again this year. Obviously, with the season being over, we won't see him again until training camp next year. I think the idea is that I think he'll definitely be on the team competing for the starting job next season. I don't want to say he's earned being the starting quarterback. I don't believe that his play has been up to a standard where you award him the starting quarterback. I think you bring in Mac Jones, Malik Willis, because the fact of the matter is, now with the Giants win, the Jets, who are, what's the score of the Jets game? The Jets are already down, about to be 14-0 more than likely. In Buffalo, they're not winning that game. They're going to have the second pick. The Raiders already, the Raiders are playing Kansas City. If the Raiders lose, they're going to have the first pick locked up. So, those are the two quarterback needy teams that are going to have the first and second picks. And more than likely, they're going to take the two quarterbacks. We'll see how it all plays out. If Dante Moore even comes out. But if he does, there's a very low probability the Browns are going to have their opportunity to get him. And knowing that now, I think, they will have the responsibility to bring in a real competition with Shedeur Sanders. And what I mean by that is somebody who has started games in the NFL for a period of time. Mac Jones has started games. and was pretty successful this season. Same thing with Malik Willis. Same thing with like a Jacoby Brissett. I would be less on board with a Jacoby Brissett just with the age, and I think the other two guys do have the potential at least to be a more long-term or a few-year solution than Jacoby Brissett does, and I think they could even provide more stability for a longer period of time than Jacoby Brissett. I don't think you can count on playing Brissett for the full season. But regardless, bringing in a guy like that to, compete with Shedeur Sanders, maybe not even win the starting job. Like maybe Shedeur Sanders beats them out and becomes the starting quarterback, in which case he earned that. But the fact of the matter to me at this point in time is that I don't think Shedeur Sanders has earned being the starting quarterback yet. I think we saw him start the most games out of any quarterback this season, which if you would have asked me at the beginning of the year, what quarterback do I want to see start the most games, it would have been Shedeur Sanders. And I'm super excited that he was able to do that because now we have enough information to say, yeah, this guy, does some things well, but needs to work on a lot to become a successful quarterback in the NFL. And, with that, he's going to have to earn it. He still is going to have to earn it because he hasn't done so. And I think earning it means beating out a proven quarterback who's had some success in the league. However, you have to go about getting one of those guys. That should be, in my opinion, that should be the plan of whoever is making those decisions. More than likely, it'll be Andrew Berry and a different head coach who is a new guy, a new leader in this locker room who, we'll have a whole bunch of content out on that. I'm not really going to talk about Kevin Stefanski much here because we're still waiting on the news with that. And I don't want to spend 10 to 15 minutes talking about Kevin Stefanski. Whenever we don't even know what's going to happen with him. And we're more than likely going to have answers with that, more solidified answers with that in the next day or two. So I think tomorrow I'll have a bonus podcast out to you guys, assuming we get some sort of news with that. But regardless of that, I think that the Shedeur plan should be, he's for sure in competition to be the starting quarterback next year, but certainly not awarded the starting job just based on the sample size that we've seen this year, because truly he hasn't done enough with it. And you can blame the line, you can blame the wide receivers. We'll have a better offensive line next year. I can almost guarantee that because it really can't be any worse. We'll have better wide receivers next year. I can almost guarantee that because it really can't be any worse. So next year, expect the quarterback room to look something like Shedeur Sanders, veteran, proven, at least capable guy, whoever it may be. And then, I don't think it'll be Dylan Gabriel, but somebody like Dylan Gabriel, who's the third string option and just in the room to provide some stability there as well. I think that really is the only way to look at Shedeur Sanders at this point. And if you are actively arguing that Shedeur Sanders has shown enough to be the solidified day one starter without competition, I just think you're being dishonest. And I think you are a Shedeur fan, which is okay. I get it. I understand it. A lot of you guys have followed Shedeur for years and years, and he's a great dude. I think he's very easy to root for, and I understand it. But if you remove the bias, the bias of that, you have to just accept that he hasn't shown enough yet, and he has to still prove it. And he'll get the opportunity to do that. So we'll talk about all that whole entire situation throughout the long off season that we have coming up. But hopefully you guys were able to enjoy the Week 18 win to leave a little bit of a better taste in our mouth going into the long, painful off season, which, trust me, I'm sure we'll have plenty to talk about with the Cleveland Browns because we always do in the off season. And I'll be here with you guys throughout the whole entire process. Thank you guys so much for tuning in the 2025 season. I know I started about halfway through, so those of you that have stopped by and hit the subscribe or hit the follow or hit the like button, I appreciate your time with me. I appreciate you listening to my jumbled ideas that I hop on the mic and talk about, but we're going to continue to do this thing into the offseason here. We're going to I have a whole bunch of content ideas to kind of fill some of the weeks where there's not a ton of Browns news and talk about the new head coaching candidates, talk about the quarterback position, talk about the draft, talk about free agency, talk about all these things. So we'll get into all of it. Make sure you guys do hit the like button and do hit the subscribe button and do hit the follow button if you haven't done so already. Make sure you guys are telling your friends about the show. If you have friends who are Browns fans and like to listen to Browns talks, because that's what we do here. And we'll have plenty of it coming very soon. But thank you guys so much for watching today. Enjoy the Steelers and Ravens game. From me personally, go Ravens tonight. I do not want the Steelers to win that game. In the slightest, nothing will make me happier than watching them lose on the prime time slot, Sunday Night Football, and lose the division, even if it means the Ravens take it again. Anyway, have a great rest of your evening. I'll talk to you all very, very soon. Bye-bye.